Hi everyone, my name is Donald Godfrey. I am an amateur animator and comic artist. My training consists of college courses from Central New Mexico Community College. I took both art classes and 3D 3D software course classes, as well as some online tutorials from David Ward, Andrew Price, and then CG Masters training tutorials, which are all of these guys are fantastic teachers, and I highly recommend that you go check them out. So today I would like to talk about my project in Another Galaxy. So in Another Galaxy is a story about a group of kids who get stuck on a planet far away from their home. And we basically follow the main character who gets a case of amnesia by getting hit by a rock. And she has to reinvent the past couple of days or so. We follow this character around until her brother finds her and brings her back to the shuttle and explains pretty much what happened the last couple of days, what the situation is now, what happened to the ship, stuff like that. And they both make a plan to reconnect to the satellite that was shot out from the ship so that they can contact their home world. So, going into this project, I thought it would take maybe a couple of weeks. I was pretty confident after I made the script, which only really took me about a week to write. I've made some revisions in the past, but yeah, it only really took me a week to write the script, and I had the same view when it came to the animation process. Boy, was I wrong. I expected a couple of months, a couple of weeks, months, maybe a year or so. It's taken me about 6 years to get to where I am right now, and most of those 6 years has been trying to teach myself how to model, rig, and animate a bipedal character. So I'm going to show you guys pretty embarrassing photos. It's my character 1 through 9 versions. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. This first one, I looking back at her, she looks okay to me. She kind of reminds me of those Gelflings from Dark Crystal. But yeah, the reason why I abandoned her was one, this was the character that kind of started the whole thing. So she was made before the script was actually written. So one, she didn't fit the character. Also, two, this character, her body is not all one mesh. So I thought I would have problems rigging her. So I didn't exactly delete her. I just pretty much I abandoned the file and made a newer version. So Mark II, I thought she was the most beautiful girl in the world while I was modeling her. This was about the time I was following David Ward's tutorials. When I got to rigging her, though, I had huge problems rigging her mouth and eyes. And part of those problems was some of you Blender users may know this, I actually applied a couple subsurf modifiers, so I was working with a lot more vertices and made the whole mesh complicated. Again, I didn't want to modify the file so much, so I started from scratch again. This one, she got a little bit closer to the animation phase. I got all the way down to rigging her, but I never actually got around to animating her. I do think I've had problems with her general face structure. I mean, it's okay for the most part, but what I was trying to go for was more of an anime style kind of look. Also, I also had problems with her collar, so I decided to shorten it down. The kind of look I was going for was a. I like those Victorian style shirts, the ones with the long collars and poofy sleeves and stuff like that. When it came down to actually moving the character, those problems just were too much to handle for a new animator. Now, the next couple of versions, Mark 4 and 5, are just heads. This was about the time I was playing around with style now. I'm trying to make a better style. This one, I don't think I was quite happy with this character's nose. I also was trying out a new hairstyle too, making it all one mesh. Wasn't quite cutting it, so what I did was made it into two meshes. Mark 5, you kind of see her ears are more like Vulcan's in that they are closer to the head but shoot straight up. Also, another big difference is this character's nose. I was trying to look for this anime look. Next version of this one, it's not exactly Mark 6 or anything. It's like Mark 5.2, but I'm just calling it Mark 6 because this character is actually fully animatable. Her rig's all set up. She can move everywhere. Her collar is not as big as the last one. So the biggest issue, as you will see when we start watching the animation, is that when this character starts speaking, you can barely see her mouth. I actually got so far with this version that I even textured her, and in the later versions, I don't get that far because I'm more focused on actual movability of the character. The bruise may come back in chapter 3, but right now I'm more focused on making the character more animated. And as you can see with this animation, for the most part, if it wasn't for her mouth being too small, I think she would have lasted a little bit longer. So the next one I want to talk about is Mark 7. She got past modeling, rigging. I didn't do the texture this time. Like I said, I wanted to focus more on characters' movement and animation style. With this one though, I abandoned her mainly because I found her rig a little too difficult to deal with. I wanted to go find tutorials and see how actual animators would use their rigs in a more effective way than what I was doing mine. I've my way of thinking was, my animation setup, my rig setup was pretty poor. Not only that, my understanding of animation was pretty poor too. You can see this in her ponytail, which seems to have a mind of its own because it uh, it seems to move on its own rather than be pulled by the character's head. So we're now uh, getting into the territory of present day. This is Tristiana Mark 9. I pulled a Windows and decided, screw 8, let's go on to 9. But right now, this is the current setup of my character. So far, I've putting her in 2 shorts for practice. You know how animation studios like Disney and Pixar they use animation tests. Like in Big Hero 6, they use animation tests to show to give the animators an idea of what the character would do in a simple way of sitting down. And with Pixar, the one I remember the most was Violet. How would her powers work? What would the character do? How would she disappear and stuff like that? This one, I kind of made a spoof on Gatorade. I made a at the time of this short, my dad was getting all sorts of Gatorade flavors, which were kind of weird flavors. Like the most normal one was like the cucumber lime, but there was like asparagus, strawberries, really weird combinations. So I decided to riff a Harry Potter line from the first movie and combined it with a with Gatorade to make this green age short. For the most part, I think I did a pretty good job. The only problem I had though was that my character, her arm, I put it in FK, so her arm moves around much more than I think it would normally move around. I should say her free arm. Not only that, but everybody in here looks unbelievably shiny. This is before I think I put in subsurfing, which is something I did for the later animations. Also, a couple of my coworkers who saw this animation commented on how Dex, the small little boy, looks like Link, and Triss kind of looks like Tomb Raider. Yeah, that's pretty much where these characters got their color schemes. Is that Tristiana, her color scheme, I found that brown and white sort of worked with her color scheme. With Dex, yeah, that was kind of the look I was going for with Link. So, right now, with the progress with Scene 2 is I'm almost done with it. However, a couple of problems rendering out the full scene, mainly because of these trees. I do like the color of the leaves and stuff like that, but the problem with these trees is that they are very, very difficult to render. It takes my computer like 20 minutes to render each frame from this animation, and I thought it was a little too much to ask for my computer to render 20 minutes per frame at full CPU quad core range. So I pretty much abandoned the trees in this scene. I went for a much more simplistic look, mainly because the trees do not look like they fit in this scene. Everything else is just a smooth mesh. texture painted and everything else. There's nothing else that really supports life like trees. So the trees actually look like they're out of place. Also, I didn't put too much effort into rendering animating the character's ponytail. I will be doing that in chapter 3 a little bit more, but right now I was focusing more on the character's body, making sure that the body was not going through the ground mesh or stuff like that. I learned a lot about the character's eyes. Um, so what I started doing last year was hitting the books a little more harder, getting into tutorials with balls and um, animating characters. I actually bought the CG Masters animation package, which is really great, by the way. I hope to produce more animations than I did in the past. So this brings me on to my current project and the last one on the list here. I decided, like a couple of years ago, I saw this. It was a competition for a Halloween episode for like about 11 seconds. You had to animate for about 11 seconds. And that's pretty much where this idea came from. Was unfortunately it became a lot more than 11 seconds. I think it's more like 5-10 minutes long. But yeah, it's basically about a character walking alone at night, meets up with a ghost, goes trick-or-treating, and then finds this poor character who didn't have any luck, sort of like that Charlie Brown episode with the Great Pumpkin. I'm also hoping to finish it around July. I also want to use a couple of copywritten characters. For instance, Princess Celestia from Hasbro, Irma from a comic strip I like from Deviant Art, Cody from a local fun center that I have here, and Tom Baker, the Fourth Doctor in Doctor Who from BBC. What I'm trying to do with this animation is make a fun project. So I hope you enjoy the short clip I have at the end here. But I will see you guys next time. So I hope you guys have a nice day and enjoy the short.